Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back on the Updates 1.95 dev server and it's time to have a look at an interesting vehicle. This one isn't actually in the tech tree, but it is in the files and therefore we can make an interesting user mission out of it. This is the Merkava Mk.2B. So fundamentally different from the other Merkava that we have in the gift section. And the other major difference between this and what we see from the gift section vehicle is this one is actually, at least right now, in the tech tree of the Americans. So it sits at BR 9.0 and is in the full tech tree. How cool is that? You know, everybody is able to experience what it is like to play a Merkava. Now the question is, what is the difference between this and the Merkava we already have in the game? Well, the main difference seems to be these little smoke launchers that it has on the front, and also some nice little additions to some other systems. The Mk.2B, they added thermal optics to it. Now unfortunately, there is no thermal optics to be shown on this test drive, but that was the major upgrade from the standard Mark II to the Mk.2B. The actual upgrades from the Mark I to the Mark II, when it came to general service, even though they're very much a similar vehicle, they incorporated a lot of stuff into the Mark II to try and make it better for urban warfare and also low intensity conflicts. So the weight and the engine they wanted to keep the same as the Mark I. The Mark II also used the same 105mm gun, so you're going to be getting the same performance out of this gun as you are from the gift variant, but it also had a 60mm mortar which was redesigned during construction of it and would be located within the hull and configured for remote firing to remove the need to expose the operator to enemy small arms. Now I'm not sure that the mortar is going to be available on this machine, but it does have... Whoops! Yes, I forgot, they're linked to different things. So you can see here that the grenades do still come out of the same position as before, so that, you know, is lovely to see. I'm not going to hit that button again, otherwise it's going to you know, screw with everything. But you can see that it does have some additions on the back of it which do make it different to the Merkava that we used to. Pretty much a little bit of what looks like some mesh and also some extra metal to protect it from what would be seen, I suppose, as heat warheads, whether it be RPGs or whether it be something else. So that is something, you know, to look forward to when it comes to this machine. It should have the same ammunition though, it should have the same general feel to it, and also the same weight, so it should be able to canter around at the same pace. As a person who is very much a proponent for the idea that machines should have tech tree equivalents to them, I'm very happy to see this Merkava in game for that reason. Now there is of course going to be calls towards the idea of, well, why isn't there an Israeli tech tree? Why wouldn't this thing go into an Israeli tech tree? But at the same time you must understand that just seeing it for a lot of people is incredibly important and incredibly nice for them to see. But I will stress, this right now is not available in the standard tech tree for America. So even though it's there in the files, it isn't technically there on the server. So this, we've had to obviously hodgepodge it to try and show you it today, but this is not something that is, you know, completely available yet. And for me, because it's not completely available yet, there is obviously the fact that it might be available in some form of gift setting. It may be one of those vehicles which doesn't make it to the tech tree, but instead becomes a festive vehicle. It would be kind of surprising if that was the case though, since this machine of course is very similar to the other Merkava, which we already had in one of those style events. I think it would make much more sense if this vehicle made it to the game in the form that you see it here, and also in the form of in the American tech tree. It also gives light on the issue of, you know, will we see more Israeli vehicles going forward? With the fact that this is sat here, I think it is very simple to say that yes, we will see more Israeli vehicles going forward. We will also see more vehicles from other nations. Remember, we have the South African Roycat, which is also, coming into the game in this update. And yeah, it's just, really nice to see. The Mark II also had some slight differences when it came to its construction within the hull, and configured for remote firing when it came to 60mm and also small arms fire. There was also an Israeli-designed automatic transmission, and increased fuel storage for increased range was installed on all of the Mark IIs as well, and I'm pretty sure that's this little area on the back that you can see. It still keeps the area on the back where you can keep some troops into it, which is nice as well. It also has an improved fire control system, but we're not exactly sure, since that bit is classified, what that actually means for the grand scheme of things. Look at those wonderful sparks. But yeah, the main upgrade between this and the one that we see as a premium should be the thermal addition to this machine. The other thing as well is, I know a lot of people are kind of sad that America isn't getting a ton of stuff this update. The fact that all we've seen is an M60A3 TTS with some Rise ERA on it. Also, the Apache is kind of just sat in the files weeping because that's also not in a tech tree. It's just kind of sat there. Maybe this will hopefully show people that, there is some more stuff coming in the future. Maybe not in 1.95, but maybe in the future of War Thunder, that will get added to the top tiers of the American tech tree. And with the M60A3 TTS, with the XM1 going up, there is now a vacant spot at 9.0 to run a vehicle like this with stuff like the MBT70 and the XM803. So that is at least, a reason for this vehicle to exist in the American tech tree, to bolster that lineup that we see, which is just a wonderful lineup to play overall. If you've ever played the American lineup of the, of 9.0 right now, it's just really fun. You've got a bit of everything. You've got a bit of armor, you've got a bit of speed, you've got great guns, and this would be, I suppose, more of an armor component than anything else, but it would definitely add to that now that we have a bunch of stuff that is going up. 9.0 as well is a very competitive VR. The reason for this is, of course, because now we have 10.3 vehicles. The top VR range is 10.3 to 9.3, so a lot of people are going to be playing 9.0 to 8.7 to stay out of that bracket. And since a lot of the popular premiums when it comes to, the game at top tier are 8.7 and 9.0, you have a situation where it's a very popular VR. I was personally playing a lot of 8.0 and 8.3 recently with the French, and constantly up-tiered into XM1s and also, 8.7 machines such as the A1A1L44 and the AMX30 Super were definitely making, their ways. So seeing this come in at around about a 9.0 BR, this could become one of those machines which isn't as fast as something like an XM1, but does have more survivability, which would be really fun to see in that general bracket. It has a really good general gun. It is a large vehicle, because obviously it's not just a tank, it's also a pseudo APC in a way, because it has access to that crew compartment in the booty where it can keep people, and it also has, 4-man crew here, so knocking the turrets, which is hard to do in this machine, but knocking the turrets will kill it. But it's just, it's not an easy thing to do. Most of the time in the Merkava you will survive one shot, whether it is to the turret and it ricochets, or it's to that engine down there, which will just eat a shell. And with the extra smoke grenades on the front, it means that you have once again that extra survivability. And with this APF-SDS round that the 105 has access to, since it is exactly the same gun as the Merkava we already have in the tree, it will be good enough to go through pretty much anything you fight. There aren't many vehicles that can stand up to the APF-SDS of the Merkava, and the only real problem with the Merkava when it comes to the game is its overall general speed. It does take a little bit of time to get into positions, but once it is in those positions, it's incredibly strong. And for me, it's one of my favorite tanks at higher tiers because of that. It offers a different playstyle to pretty much everything else. When we have a situation where we have a top tier, we have a lot of vehicles which are setting up to be very fast with very powerful guns, it is nice just to have a slightly different vehicle which offers you something slightly different. And that's what I see with the Merkava, as well as stuff like the Challenger and the Challenger 2. I know a lot of people don't generally like the playstyle of those vehicles, but for me, it's a breath of fresh air on top of what would already be exactly the same vehicles. And that is a problem that I have with a lot of top tier MBTs, with a lot of vehicles which are at high tiers. They all feel the same. But the Merkava is the one that stands out to be different. It stands out to be one of those vehicles where you can just wander about in it and take a few hits and fire back. It's one of those ones which you can layer a massive amount of smoke just around the place, just to either annoy the enemy or to be able to push forward. And also, with the addition of thermals, it means that at any point you will be able to laser in on your targets as well. There are a ton of Israeli vehicles that I'm interested in, mainly the Sherman variants that they were able to produce, which some of them we already kind of have in the game, but we don't have all of them. And with the addition of another Merkava, and also there are other Merkavas as well, the Mark III of course, and the Mark IV, we are getting to a point where we're seeing more and more of these Israeli vehicles, which means that other Israeli vehicles are much more likely to come as well. I'm very happy to see this machine. I want to see how well it does. I also want to see the RP cost of it. And on top of that as well, hopefully it comes in update 1.95. But if it doesn't come in 1.95, it is something to look forward to. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, J. Wilt, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyins Terry, Elove Goat, and Seductive Trashcan for supporting the channel.